Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the North Lincolnshire series, a district of 56 parishes in the north of Lincolnshire. Let's see which one we're visiting today. Welcome back to North Lincolnshire, everybody, on a cold, not very pleasant November morning. I am actually not on my own today because Nikki and two of the girls have just headed off down this street here. This is Barrow Road, and they're heading towards the cemetery in this place, and that will have not only its own video, which should already be out on the channel, but also parts of that you will see in today's video. We'll catch up with them later, but first of all, I'm heading into the town of Barton-upon-Humber. This North Lincolnshire episode is sponsored by Past Days, a family history blog by June Terrington. You'll find her link in the description. And this video is also sponsored by Jamie's Fitness Studio, based on Low Road, Greyingham, near Curtin in Lindsay. Jamie is one busy lady. Check her out by calling 07906 749 574 or emailing hello@jamies.co.uk. Online membership is available. There's a link to her Facebook page in the description. Jamie's Fitness Studio. Get fit, get happy, get healthy. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Welcome to the town of Barton-upon-Humber, known as Barton-on-Humber or just as Barton to many. It's located on the Humber Estuary at the southern end of the Humber Bridge. Thanks to that fact, we're just 6 miles southwest of Hull, the nearest city to Barton, via road. Other nearby towns include Scunthorpe to the southwest and Grimsby to the southeast. Barton is a town which dates back centuries. It's always been industrial too. In its time, it's been known for milling, brick and tile making and rope making, all three of which are covered here. It's also had some famous residents, including Ted Lewis, Phillip Pape and Henry Treece, the latter of whom was a poet and an author who taught at Barton Grammar School. Then there's Fred Hopper, who in 1880 started a bicycle repair business here. After buying the Elswick Cycle Company of Newcastle, he developed Elswick Hopper into a major manufacturer. And Barton used to be the base of Kimberley-Clark until 2013. Kitchen company Wren Kitchens bought their site and declared it their new head office, known locally as the Nest. Barton is absolutely loaded with things of interest. There's no way I could cover it all, so please don't have a go at me for not covering it all. It's impossible to. Come with me around one of North Lincolnshire's oldest and most historic towns. We begin on Whitecross Street, outside the Volunteer Arms. This is one of 7 pubs in Barton, according to my sources, although there were at one time as many as 20. This one is one of the town's listed buildings. As well as having many pubs, Barton also has many religious buildings. Here's the first of many of those. Built in 1988, this is St Augustine Webster, the town's Roman Catholic church. It replaced a 1938 church whose presbytery still remains. At the end of Whitecross Street is a park where we find Baysgarth House, a stunning building which is now a museum. It dates from 1731. Originally a house, one of the best known families to have resided here are the Nelthorpes. The house stands on the edge of the massive Baysgarth Park. As a museum, it covers the lives of the local people and houses an industrial museum in its old stable block. Before that, it saw a range of uses, including being part of Barton Grammar School at one time. And there are a few other landmarks around Barton which bear the name Baysgarth. One of those is Baysgarth School, which is Barton's secondary school, which is along Barrow Road towards the cemetery. Right, time to head out of the park and see what's next. We've lots to see here, so this next bit is quite quick. Here's the town's bowling club, Brig Road Bowls Club, which ironically is actually off Park Avenue. This was established in 1919. Like many things in and around Barton, it uses the Humber Bridge in its logo. After walking through a predominantly residential area, our next stop is Tofts Road, where we find another play area. Compared to Baysgarth Park, this is a much more modest size. Now we've hit the A1077, or to give it its proper name at this point, Ferriby Road. Along here, we find a petrol station, which stands directly opposite a garage, although it's the building next to this which is much more interesting to me. It's an archive and exhibition celebrating the art, life and times of Barton's own Edward or Ted Lewis. He was best known for creating the character Jack Carter, the protagonist in the 1971 cult film Get Carter, starring Michael Caine. So there's a bit on the wall here about Ted Lewis. He was a novelist, artist and musician who lived most of his life in North Lincolnshire. As author of the novel on which Get Carter was based, he established himself as the father of modern noir. Such books and films have no real hero and depict dark deeds and events in a graphic way. Ted wrote 9 novels in all, plus TV scripts. And there he is, the man himself. A right turn and we're on Holydyke. This area is where we find 2 of Barton's emergency services. On the southern side of the road, we have the fire station, and opposite this on the northern side is the police station. To the right of the police station is Providence House. It was originally a private residence, but between 1920 and 1945, it was an orphanage. When it closed, the children transferred to Barton House in Harrogate. It also served as the town's library too afterwards. Next, we have the St John Ambulance Headquarters on the end of Fleetgate. In the 1930s, this was the Hull Savings Bank. It was known as the Penny Bank and later became TSB. Here's one of Barton's 3 primary schools. This is Castledyke Primary School, formerly known as Barton County School. Loving the poppy display outside this, by the way. At the end of this road is the railway station. So Barton is a big town but has a small railway station, and there's something very notable about this station. Not only is it a single track line with 1 platform, it's also the end of the line. I have never seen that before in such a big place. That's quite amazing. This is the line that runs through places like New Holland that we've seen before. This is as far as you can go. And there's also something very interesting on its railings up here. There's a plaque here, and this commemorates the first public train into Barton-upon-Humber on the 1st of March 1849, the 150th anniversary. So this must have been placed here in 1999, if my maths is right. Barton sits at the end of the Barton to Cleethorpes branch line, which opened in 1849. As well as trains, you can catch buses here too. Bus services link the town with Cleethorpes, Grimsby, Scunthorpe and Hull. Overlooking this transportation hub is the imposing White Swan. This reopened in 2013 after a period of closure. It has regular local live music and was voted the Scunthorpe and District Pub of the Year in both 2017 and 2018. Now for a walk down Fleetgate, which for me was the most fascinating street in Barton. This is a narrow one-way street with loads of old shop fronts. Some are still used as such, like this cafe, which has a George V postbox in its wall. Here we have Charlie's Bar, which I have to admit didn't look very open. Mind you, it was still early in the morning. This was clearly an old inn, but as for the name of it, I'm afraid that one stumped me. No worries though, the best is yet to come. There's plenty on Fleetgate. There's a couple more old shop fronts. That one there, for example. and one here just opposite it. Obviously not shops anymore. And I'm standing outside another building here which is definitely not used anymore. That apparently, according to that sign over there, was Eagle House Care Home. Little did I know at the time I was about to pass the oldest building not just in Barton but in the whole of North Lincolnshire. That would be the green fronted building seen in shot here, 51 Fleetgate. 51 Fleetgate dates from around 1325. It has a 15th century timber framed rear wing. Its last resident, Fred Clipson, died in 1989. In its windows are these information boards about not just itself, but Barton as a whole. The boards tell you that Barton was once a very important medieval port, and that Fleetgate would have been the heart of both Barton's maritime and industrial activities. We'll see some evidence of that industry later. I suppose then, Fleetgate was effectively the old town centre. The boards go on to say that number 51 likely housed a wealthy merchant who traded on the Humber. Speaking of trade, we're about to hit the modern town centre. So here's the Coach and Horses, another pub apparently stood empty, doing nothing at the moment. It's always sad to see that. Off the high street is Maltby Lane. This here is a former Wesleyan day school which was built in 1867. It closed in 1915 when the county school opened on Castledyke West. It's recently been refurbished and has been relaunched as the Hub. I dived off the high street the other way next to catch Barton's Victory Club on Hungate. This recently celebrated its 100th anniversary, having been here since 1921. You can see here it still has banners up from that event. On the corner of the High Street and Chapel Lane, we have another of Barton's pubs. That's the Red Lion, which is a good venue for watching sports apparently, because it has an outside television. It's also family and pet friendly too. On Chapel Lane now, we pass this building, Barton's former United Reformed Chapel. This is the oldest surviving independent chapel in Lincolnshire. Now boarded up, the church was constructed in 1806 and it closed in 1993. So many boarded up buildings that I've seen so far, it's unbelievable. You know, I would love to take over a property such like as that that's been boarded up and just, you know, redo it and bring it back to its former glory. Unfortunately, I will never ever have the funds to do that, so yeah, never mind. But they really do need looking after, buildings like that, you know, otherwise they just sort of get left to wreck and ruin effectively. Now, on the other side of the road here, there's another religious building. It's that one there with the tall roof. Let's go and see what that one is. And it's Trinity Methodist Church, a pale brick building with a pediment and a Welsh slate roof. Around the back is a large red brick extension facing Holydyke. An earlier Wesleyan chapel once stood on this site, dating to 1816. Briefly back on Holydyke now, here's another pub, the Wheatsheaf. On the corner beyond this you can see what was the head office of Elswick Hopper, the cycle company founded by Fred Hopper. It was converted to flats in 2006. From one pub to another, over the road is the magnificent George Hotel. One of the older inns of Barton, this was originally called the George and Dragon. It dates back to 1695 and at one time belonged to the Nelthorpe family. And that brings us into Barton's marketplace. Barton was granted a market charter by Henry III in 1238. An annual fair was granted by another charter in 1307. So that was a bit fortunate. A couple of shots ago you saw a lorry come through your screen with Wren Kitchens on the side of it. I need to mention Wren Kitchens because if you carry on through the town centre along Barrow Road, you'll eventually come to, on the left, a massive industrial estate where Wren Kitchens are based. So that was handy, wasn't it? Barton's Corn Exchange was designed by D.W. Ashton and built in 1853. There was a butter market on its ground floor. This building has yellow Galt clay bricks, unlike the more usual reddish-brown ones made locally. Turning around at this point, we're now going down the side of the George Hotel onto George Street, which then becomes King Street. Together with the High Street and the Marketplace, these form Barton's main shopping area. This area has everything you need in a small town. Plenty of shops, a butcher's, a bakery, a pharmacy and a health centre. There's also food outlets and some small gift shops too. It's well worth checking out, folks. We're coming into an area that's loaded with many interesting old buildings. You'll appreciate here I can't cover them all. This one, however, is the former police station and magistrates court, which was opened in 1847, and around the corner there's a museum to see too. I've got to tell you, the number of old buildings, interesting buildings in Barton is ridiculous. There's loads. Here's another one. This is the home of Barton-upon-Humber Town Council, where there's a notice board, so I'm just going to lob a card on that. There we go, that's officially done. I'll just stand back so you can see the building. There we go. It says assembly rooms above its door, and there are two plaques I can see, one either side of the door. That one is to do with the temperance hall, and I can't read the other one because I'm too far away from it. I'll get a bit closer and I'll tell you what it says in a moment. But opposite this, there's the Wilderspin National School, which is the museum I said I was heading for a moment ago. So let's talk about this next. The Wilderspin National School opened in 1844 and was originally known as Queen Street School. It closed in 1978 and now acts as a museum focusing on the life and works of Samuel Wilderspin. Wilderspin was known nationally for his pioneering work on infant schools. This building is the only known surviving school built to his designs. Wilderspin himself taught at the school for several years before retiring in 1848. He would die just a few years later in 1866. Before I forget, the other plaque on the town council building opposite was to do with that building's restoration. It was originally a temperance hall in 1843 and became the assembly rooms in 1906. Close by to these is a former primitive Methodist chapel dating from 1867, and so too is this building, the Free Charity School. Isaac Pitman, the inventor of the Pitman shorthand method for the English language, was its first master. Okay, our next job is to go down that little side street down there, and that's going to take us towards the main church. Just before we do, check this building out. This is the Queen's. The Queen's was built in 1911 as a liberal club. It was constructed on the corner edge of a former pleasure garden belonging to New Hall, the wrought iron gates of which now grace the main entrance to Baysgarth Park. Now we've hopped over to Burgate, and this is the main church, St Mary's. This is one of Barton's two medieval churches, which are located about 170 yards apart. St Mary's is believed to have originated as a chapel on the original marketplace. It was then enlarged and increased in importance as the town's trade began to thrive. The majority of the building is in the early English style. Its windows date to the 14th and 15th centuries, and the window glass to the 17th. The church was open too, so I went in for a little look around. It has chancel monuments dating to 1626 and 1729, and check out this amazingly well preserved medieval wooden chest. Well, if I may, this is cavernous. It's absolutely huge. Wow. I'm having to stretch up a long way to see to the ceiling here. And check out the windows. Again, they're all clear. There's no stained glass. And so the natural light is pronounced even more inside this church. Fantastic. Look at this gorgeous chancel. How big this is. Absolutely stunning. The other church is St Peter's, which can be seen here on the other side of Beck Hill. Although before we go there, I need to tell you about that white house first. That's the old vicarage, which has had not just one, but two notable residents. There are two plaques telling us who they were. David George Hogarth is the first. He was born here in 1862. An archaeologist and scholar, he was the acting director of the Arab Bureau and was responsible for delivering the Hogarth message in 1918. The second is about Chad Varra, who was also born here in 1911. In 1953, he founded the Samaritans, the world's first crisis hotline to provide telephone support to those contemplating suicide. So to St Peter's Church. This predates St Mary's and is one of the best known Anglo-Saxon buildings in England. Formerly the parish church, it's now run by English Heritage and houses an exhibition exploring its history. Now, of course, there's not much point dwelling on the churches too much in this video because Nikki has made a video herself of the two churches and the cemetery. I'll give you a little excerpt here as to what is in that video if you haven't already watched it, but it is already out on the channel.
Okay, so I've had a quick look at the map of this cemetery, and there's a huge cemetery to explore. I'm just going to give a pan round so you can see what I can see, but I'm actually coming up on the mortuary chapels, so that'll be the first thing. But let's just go around. Let's go nice and steady. So you've got a field there, got the mortuary chapels that are behind, sort of here. And then as we go around, there is a huge expanse of cemetery. There's some interesting graves and memorials and things here, so we're going to have a close look at some of them. Let's just take in this one while we're actually stood next to it. So here rest the mortal remains of Mrs. Frances May, who departed this life April 22nd 1874, and then there's a Bible verse, I believe, on there. So yeah, you know, we've got a lot of very old stuff in this place. Just going to turn back around. Lots of old stuff in this place, old memorials, and there's also some newer memorials as well. This cemetery was one that has undergone expansion, although I've not been able to find a lot of information online. I have found some, and what I can do is link what I did find in the description box below, or should I say, I'll give the links to Andy and he'll pop them in the description box below.
And I've just nipped back into the Church of St Mary because this is where they all are. Hello Lauren, how are you? Are we all right? I'll take that as a yes. Hannah is somewhere hiding behind the pillars over there. And here's your favourite. Here's Nikki.
Here I am. Well, this is quite a little find, isn't it? What
Absolutely, it is, yeah. So you've been off and been doing the cemetery video, which will already be out, of course, at this point. So yeah. Yeah,
I've explored the main Barton-upon-Humber cemetery, the main cemetery at the War Memorial, because it is the time of the armistice that we're filming this video. It's the 12th of November. It's a Saturday, so the remembrance services will be taking place tomorrow. I've also had a look at St Peter's Church and the graveyard attached to that as well. And then come down here to St Mary's, but I've not filmed anything in here because I know that you've already covered this one.
I have, yes. So
yeah, a lovely church, lots of light in it. Only a little bit of stained glass, but it's just nice to sort of see a church that's literally flooded with light. It's
absolutely
really
right.
Nice.
Yeah. The last part of the main walk brings us to one of Barton's former windmills. There were as many as 5 mills in Barton in the 1600s. This one, though, is later, dating from 1803, but it's arguably the most impressive. This is Kingsgarth Mill, which once had 6 sails. Rumour has it that in around 1868, one of the sails fell off onto the road, resulting in the rest being removed. Certainly up until the 1860s, and more likely beyond, this was a chalk whiting mill. After hopping in the car, we drove up to the town's main sports area. This is the Easy Buy Stadium, where Barton Town Football Club play their home games. Nicknamed the Swans, they currently compete in the Northern Counties East League. Also on Marsh Lane, next to Barton Town Football Club, we have Barton Town Cricket Club. They go by the name of the Vikings, and they're sponsored by Wren Kitchens, who lend their name to this very well kept ground. Okay, now we're in the car park of Barton-upon-Humber's Tesco, of all places. And from here, you can see one of the town's biggest tourist attractions. That there is the rope walk. I made a Tales from the Village Green about this. Go check that out if you haven't already, but it's worthy of a mention again in this episode. The rope walk is an elongated building measuring 1/4 mile in length. It manufactured and supplied rope. The ropery was in production through both World Wars and the Great Depression. It was taken over by Bridport Gundry Limited in 1986 and later British Ropes in the summer of 1989, finally closing in December of the same year. It's now a community performance venue for live music, theatre and cinema. Other facilities include a printmaking workshop, artist studios, meeting rooms and a cafe. There's also the Rope Walk Museum, which has some exhibits focusing on the history of the factory and its employees. It's truly an amazing place with quite the backstory. So from the Rope Walk you can see another old windmill. It's not very far away, it's at the end of Hewson's Lane, and there it is. It's very much derelict, this one. There's no windows in it, no top to it. Doesn't look like it's going to fall down anytime soon, but certainly it's definitely not used for anything at the moment. Running behind the Rope Walk is Barton Haven. This used to be a late Anglo-Saxon artificial harbour. At various times thereafter, there were coal staiths, a petroleum depot and various other wharves and businesses along the haven. There are two former places of worship here too. These are St Chad's Mission Church and a Wesleyan Mission Church. There was also St Chad's C.A.B. School, which operated from 1904 until 1967. This whole area used to be a village in its own right, Barton Waterside, which since the 1950s has gradually declined into a residential area at the northern end of Barton-upon-Humber. Its pub survives though, that's the Sloop Inn. And now we're off down Far Ings Road, which was the location of several clay pits on the Humber foreshore. These were the focus of a tile and cement industry from 1850 until 1959. You can also view the Humber Bridge here too. Well, we can view the Humber Bridge, but we can do much better than that, because as well as drive over it, which I did way back in the Hessel episode in the East Riding, you can also walk over it. And the best thing about it is that walking over it is completely free, and that's what we're about to do, isn't it, tribe? So let's head for the bridge and let's walk over the Humber. I'm well aware there are things on this side that I haven't spoken about, for example Water's Edge Park and some other stuff that's, you know, around Barton Haven, but we can see all that from the bridge and it's going to be a cracking view. That didn't go to plan. Only the western footpath was open at this time, so we couldn't see to the east. However, what's to the west is still interesting. Check out this former tile works, which has now been turned into a garden centre. The west footpath is open daily from 5 AM until 9 PM. Bridge users can access the footpath from the Humber Bridge Country Park on the northern bank or opposite the Humber Bridge Park on the southern bank, like we did. It's important to note that cyclists can also use this footpath, but pedestrians have right of way. Humber Bridge board vehicles also travel along the footpath, and they have flashing orange lights to make their presence clear. The bridge is 1.4 miles long, anchorage to anchorage. It does wobble a little bit, but that's normal because it's designed to. You'll find some interesting murals along the way too. Check these out. The funny thing is, if you stop, that's when you feel the vibrations. If you keep walking, it's just like walking on any other pavement anywhere else in the country. It just doesn't feel any different. But as soon as you stop walking, you do feel the movement in the bridge. It's really weird. Okay, so we've reached the halfway point. Everybody stopped for a rest. There are no benches on the bridge, but it would be helpful, wouldn't it, if there were? Anyway, we're in the halfway point of the Humber, so this should, in theory, be the widest point. You'd have thought. It's a great view anyway. It's just a shame we can't see the other side because, as I said earlier, the eastern footpath is closed owing to some roadworks at the moment, so it's west only. So it's west one way and west back the other way. Right, whilst we continue to walk over the bridge, you guys are going to get today's picture bit. And it's a big place this, so today you've got 10 as opposed to the usual 5. So we're down off the bridge and we've come to a little viewing area where you can get a really good view of the Humber Bridge. And this should be one of the last times we see the bridge on the channel now, because I've pretty much covered all the places that are around it. Where we're standing here is an old Coast Guard station that was opened by the Duke of Edinburgh in 1880, and it's now the Viking Way Cafe. It's the start of the Viking Way long distance footpath, as you can see there, Barton to Oakham, 140 miles. And this is where we're going to end today's episode with some food. Mine's the tomato and basil soup with the baguette for the princely sum of £4.20, which I think is good. So yeah, we've enjoyed our time here in Barton, and I'm well aware that I haven't been everywhere here, but this is such a big place, and there's probably going to be people out there who will point out that I've not been here, not been there, not been everywhere. But to be honest with you, I think I've had a damn good go at it. It's not the easiest place to cover. There's another one down in North Lincolnshire though, and it leaves us with not many to go. 7 in fact. Oh, Lauren's come to say hello.
Hello.
Did you find them dogs interesting?
They're so cute.
Lauren's been making friends.
Just jumping up with me.
Lauren's been making friends with the dogs, haven't you?
And then the brown one,
yeah,
was just started licking on his hand. So cute. And they're so tiny as well.
It's funny what pleases kids some days. Anyway, this has been the town of Barton-upon-Humber, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.